Please subscribe. It helps a lot.
The morning light didn't pour into his apartment. It waited politely behind gauzy curtains Chris had picked out. Creamy beige, like everything else. My coffee cooled faster than I could drink it, mostly because I forgot to sip. I sat on one of the stools by the kitchen island, staring through the steam at the side of Chris's face as he scrolled his phone. He was already dressed, of course. Collared shirt, pressed slacks, cuffs stiff with starch, not a wrinkle in sight. He didn't look at me. He rarely did in the mornings. I used to find it charming. How focused he could be. How tightly wound in his little rituals. Now it left a space between us, wide and silent. There was a time I would have felt his boredom, his quiet annoyance, or maybe a flicker of affection. With everyone else, it came in like weather. Anger, joy, nervous guilt. Whole conversations in the pit of my chest. But Chris? Nothing. Always nothing. I used to think that was a blessing. That I'd finally found someone who didn't overwhelm my stupid ability to feel the emotions of others. That I could breathe beside him without drowning in another person's feelings. I looked at that piece your friend posted, he said mid-scroll. The mural? The one with what was it, a burning swan? Phoenix, I murmured. He tapped his phone, lips pressed tight. Right, it was a lot. I knew what he meant. A lot was Chris speak for anything not approved by his mother or his alma mater. He wasn't cruel exactly, just sanded down, too smooth to hold anything properly. T's been working on that series for a year. They're about rebirth and survival. Chris sipped his espresso, setting the cup down without a sound. I guess I just prefer things that don't shout at me. My fingers curled around my mug. The coffee was cold now. I kept my voice even. T's work isn't shouting. He offered a shrug. I'm all for expression, Van, but subtlety has value too. His gaze drifted toward me for the briefest second, as if to say I should know better. As if art should be polite, tasteful, beige. I forced a smile and didn't argue. The last time we disagreed about something subtle, I ended up apologizing for a week. We sat there, both quiet. He tapped through headlines. I tried to draw a single line in my sketchbook, something to tether me, but my hands didn't want to make anything. They just hovered, uncertain. In the distance, I could hear construction down the street. Car horns, a dog barking. All the signs of life happening outside this curated, climate-controlled stillness. I kept thinking of T's studio. Mismatched chairs, paint-splattered tile, a half-finished banner draped across the couch. I remembered the way they spoke with their whole body, unafraid to take up space. The way their energy leapt toward me before they even entered the room. They'd hugged me last week, and I nearly cried. Not because I was sad, because they felt so full of joy, it overwhelmed me. Like music in a silent church. Chris stood up and adjusted his sleeves. Don't forget dinner with Mom tonight, he said, brushing a kiss against my hair. You're wearing the navy sweater. He didn't ask. He never asked. I nodded, though I hadn't decided what I'd wear. Not really. Not yet. I watched him leave the kitchen, watched his figure disappear behind the door to the bedroom. The silence returned, patient and heavy, pressing in from the edges. There was a time I thought it meant peace. Now I wasn't so sure. The dining room belonged in a real estate brochure. Warm pendant lights, linen napkins, a row of candles that nobody would dare light. Everything beige again, but this time with gold trim. Even the salad looked staged. Chris's mother greeted us with a kiss on the cheek and a pinch at my sleeve. Tophy, look at him, doesn't he clean up nicely? Topher, Chris corrected gently, voice even. Oh, please, she laughed, already pulling out a chair for me. He'll always be Tophy to me. It's so darling, isn't it, Van? I smiled the way I'd learned to, controlled lips, raised eyebrows, minimal teeth. It was a strange performance, being presented like a prize someone had won but didn't want to unwrap in front of company. The table filled with conversation about mortgage rates, private school donations, and how much better the weather had been last June. I stayed quiet, nodding in the right places. I could sense emotion in the room like background noise. Chris's father was mildly bored, already calculating when he could excuse himself. His mother's pleasant tone never matched her feelings. Impatience, subtle tension, something else beneath the gloss. Chris placed a careful hand on my thigh. It was meant to reassure, I think, but the weight of it felt more like a leash. "We've been looking at houses," he said suddenly, with that smile he saved for moments when he wanted to sound confident, not collaborative. "Somewhere quiet, conservative." His mother brightened. "Good. There's too much chaos these days. A neighborhood with a good HOA will keep that nonsense out." My fork paused just above the plate. Chris added, "Space for kids. Maybe a guest room. Home office for Van, of course." A laugh fluttered at the table. "For the art?" she asked. My cheeks warmed. Chris nodded without hesitation. "Yeah, for now. For now." I didn't speak for the rest of the meal. I played my role. Polished, agreeable, pliable, like marble someone else had already chiseled. Back at the apartment, Chris unbuttoned his cuffs while I stood by the window, fingers itching for charcoal, for canvas, for something that didn't smile on cue. "They liked you," he said. "I could tell. You were a little quiet. They had a lot to say." He turned to me, brows raised, not upset, just alert. "It's not a performance, babe. It's about making a good impression. They don't need to know everything right away." "What don't they need to know?" He shrugged. "The tea stuff. Your more political work. The pronoun thing. I don't think they'd understand. They don't have to." Chris crossed the room, hands in pockets. "Look, I'm not saying you can't be yourself. Just be a little more polished around them. You know how they are." The line didn't sting. It didn't pierce. It draped over me like plastic wrap. Tight. Transparent. Hard to breathe through. He disappeared into his bedroom while I stayed behind. I found my sketchbook on the shelf, turned to a half-started portrait of him. Strong jaw, expensive haircut, steady eyes. I'd drawn the shape of his face dozens of times. I knew the angle of his nose better than I knew my own, but the space behind his eyes remained empty. I couldn't fill it in. Every attempt looked wrong, too soft, too cruel, too human. I shut the book. The next morning, T posted photos from their studio. Bright paint splattered across concrete, hands mid-motion, someone laughing out of frame. Their caption read, "Trans joy isn't a debate. It's an art form." Chris saw the post while we were brushing our teeth. "You think they should keep posting that stuff?" I wiped foam from my mouth. "You mean living?" He leaned in the mirror, checking his teeth. "I mean, if we want to adopt someday, maybe think twice about what's out there. Online stuff doesn't disappear." His voice didn't change tone. It never did when he said things like that. He sounded calm, reasonable, professional. I didn't answer. In the mirror, our reflections stood shoulder to shoulder. I couldn't tell if I'd grown smaller or if he'd grown larger, reshaping the air between us into something clean, cold, and entirely his. The living room in T's apartment didn't believe in staying quiet. Fabric scraps tangled across the floor, marker caps rolled under the table. Someone's elbow nudged a bottle of glitter glue until it tipped and shimmered across a zine titled, "Liberation is a Process." Music played low from a tinny speaker, something punchy and full of layered harmonies. The walls, like everything else in the apartment, seemed to absorb and return the energy we poured into them. I sat cross-legged on the rug, pressing transfer letters onto the back of a thrifted t-shirt. The font read, "Not all storms are named after hurricanes." T moved like weather, everywhere at once, laughing, correcting someone's spelling, running a lint roller across a tie-dyed binder someone had left too close to the fabric paint. They dropped down beside me mid-spin, their hair clipped up with an oversized butterfly claw. "You're being quiet," they said, nudging my ankle with theirs. "I'm focused. You're overthinking the spacing. Let it be messy. It's pride." I smiled, half true. The letters did look too perfect, like something Chris would say needed ironing. They leaned back, tossing a button into a plastic tub. "Chris ever show up to these things? Or is he allergic to glitter?" I didn't answer right away. T didn't press, They never pressed. Just let the question hang there between us, like a mobile suspended from a ceiling fan. He's not really a crowd person, I said eventually. T nodded without judgment, picking up a piece of cardboard. So's my grandma, but she still marches, with a cane and everything. I laughed. We both did. T's laugh always carried some kind of forgiveness inside it. We worked until the sun dipped low and someone ordered pizza. The room got louder. Bodies sprawled across secondhand cushions and beanbags. Posters curled slightly along the edges, drying on the windowsills. One read, "Trans futures are worth fighting for." Another, "No pride for some of us without liberation for all." I helped clean up and headed to Chris's place after dark, fingers smudged with paint. Back in his apartment, Chris sat on the couch watching a real estate video. A sleek couple opened white cabinets, smiled at empty rooms, the kind of places where nothing ever stuck to the walls. I stood there for a moment, waiting to feel him. Anything. "Dinner?" I asked, setting down my bag. He didn't look up. "Wasn't hungry." The words slid past without landing. "I helped T today," I offered, sitting across from him. "They're doing a series of signs, really beautiful stuff." Chris reached for the remote. "Are we still pretending that's a viable career path?" My shoulders stiffened. "It's not pretending." He muted the video, finally looked at me. "I didn't mean it like that." "Like what?" His mouth opened, then closed. He turned the volume back up. I waited. I wanted to feel something through him. Annoyance, fatigue, even defensiveness. My gift didn't care whether the emotions were good or bad, only that they were alive. But Chris gave me nothing. His presence was like air-conditioned silence, technically comfortable, completely sterile. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through old photos, mostly ones T had tagged me in. Pride last year. Me, arms slung around friends, face sunburned and delighted. Confetti stuck to my eyelashes. A neon sign behind us that read, "You are already enough." Chris wasn't in any of them. I remembered him saying he was too slammed that weekend. Now I realized he hadn't asked about it once. No questions. No curiosity. I kept flipping, hoping maybe I missed him in the background. Maybe an arm or a blurry silhouette. He never appeared. The room dimmed. The photo light glowed against my face. I stared at one of me and T, arms around each other, mid-laugh. T's pronoun pin sparkled in the sunlight. It said, "they, them" in pink and green block letters. Chris had never used those pronouns. Not once. Not even when I'd corrected him gently. Not even when T was standing right there. I set my phone down, climbed into bed beside him. He didn't stir. I pressed my palm lightly against his back, closed my eyes, and reached again. For his anger, his guilt, his joy, his shame. Anything. Still nothing. No rhythm. No tremble. Not even the static hum I sometimes felt from strangers in elevators. He lay beside me like a house with the lights off. And I began to wonder, if the man you love doesn't leave an emotional footprint, if you can't feel him even when he's touching you, does he really exist in the way you need him to? Or have you been ghosted in the most intimate way possible? The apartment door creaked when I pushed it open, softer than usual, like it wasn't sure if it should announce me. I hadn't planned to come so early. The grocery bags bit into my fingers, a bruised avocado already leaking through the bottom of one. I kicked the door shut with my heel and caught the tail end of a laugh, deep, familiar. "Chris." Then another voice. Sharper. Printer noise groaned down the hall, the mechanical cough of paper fed wrong. Someone muttered about margins. I walked into the kitchen. No one yet heard me. I set the bags down on the counter, slowly, like the sound might break something. Then I moved down the hall. The guest room door hung half open, yellow light spilling across the floor like it didn't care who saw. Inside, Chris stood at the table we'd bought last month, the one I picked for its warm grain. A desktop printer clacked, spitting out fresh transfers. His two friends, Miles and Dana, sorted t-shirts into piles by size. Every shirt read the same, LGB dropped the T, white letters on navy blue. Chris smiled as he aligned a heat press. "These'll go fast. We should set up by the river stage where the marches split," Dana snorted. "Can't wait to see the look on their faces. They'll probably cry on livestream again." Miles laughed. "We should get them a separate porta potty. You know, like a compromise." None of them noticed me. Not yet. My fingers curled around the doorframe. My breath didn't make a sound. Every cell in my body stood perfectly still, like it needed permission to react. Then Chris looked up. His eyes landed on me like I'd walked into the wrong scene of a play. Surprise first. Then a slow smoothing of his features like he wanted to control the narrative before it slipped. "Van." He straightened. "Didn't know you were back." I looked at the shirts, the signs stacked beside them. People's existence thrown around like a slur. I opened my mouth. Nothing. My throat wasn't ready for sound. It took another second before the words arrived. "What is this?" Chris held up a shirt, like that answered everything. "It's just messaging, for Pride." I didn't move. "It's about focus," he continued. "About rights. Protecting what we've worked for. Marriage, legitimacy, respectable representation. By throwing people under the bus, by erasing everything they've done?" Dana shifted but didn't speak. Miles looked away. Chris stepped toward me, palms open. He always did that when he wanted to appear reasonable. "This isn't personal. It's strategic. The community's too divided. We're losing public support because of fringe activists." "They're not fringe," I said. My voice cracked. I didn't care. "They're people. They're our friends." Chris hesitated. "The way people do when they've already made the choice and are now figuring out how to sell it. If you want this life," he said, voice low, too calm, "then yeah, you have to drop the T. You have to drop them. We're building something here. A future. You know I love you." I stood still while my world rerouted itself. My gift, the one that used to light up when others entered the room, flickered inside me. And this time it wasn't quiet. Grief. Not his. Mine. Disgust. Not theirs. Mine. Betrayal. Old and deep and familiar, finally turning its face toward me. It didn't come in a flood. It came sharp and focused. Not because of Chris. Because of me. Because I'd ignored the way he winced when T said they. Because I'd laughed too softly when he made bathroom debate jokes. Because I thought love would absorb all differences like sugar into tea. I looked down at the shirt closest to me. It still steamed from the press. The letters had cracked slightly along the edges. Imperfect. Ugly. Proud. Chris said my name again. I turned, walked out. My feet moved fast, but my chest stayed behind, floating somewhere near that table, where a part of me still wanted to believe he hadn't meant it. But I knew better. Some betrayals don't shout. They whisper, over dinner tables and shared beds. They offer futures with no mirrors. They smile when they say, "You can have everything as long as you leave them behind." I kept walking. My hands trembled, not from fear, from finally telling the truth. The city woke slowly. Sunday light spilled over rooftops, soft and reluctant, like it didn't want to disturb anything that couldn't be put back. Downtown Boise looked paper flat from the 12th floor. Storefronts closed, sky still pink with indecision. I sat cross-legged on Chris's patio, sketchbook balanced across my knees, pencil moving without thought. I hadn't slept. My hands remembered what stillness felt like, but my chest hadn't caught up. The drawing wasn't anything specific, just shadows, outlines, lines bending into forms not ready for names. Chris slid the glass door open with that same engineered gentleness he used when we fought. Like too much sound might make it real. "I didn't think you'd come back," he said. His voice carried no apology. I didn't look at him. "You're overreacting." He said it like it was a diagnosis, not a wound. The pencil paused. I watched the graphite tremble near the edge of the page, unsure whether to finish the line or let it fray. "Van," he said. My name, again, like a leash. "You know how this works. People get heated before pride. It's political, not personal." My throat stayed tight, but the words rose anyway. I didn't look at him when I spoke, didn't need to. "You're empty," I said. The silence that followed wasn't confused. It was offended. "That's why I could never feel you," I continued. "Everyone else, I sensed something. Joy, fear, rage. You? Nothing. Like trying to listen through glass." Chris laughed, quick and dry. "Right. Now I'm emotionally defective?" "No," I said. "You're not defective. You've spent so long performing the version of yourself you think people want, there's nothing real left underneath. Shame replaced everything. Shame and whatever your mom claps for." He stepped onto the patio, arms crossed like armor. "You're throwing this away because of a slogan, because of a few pronouns in your little art crew." I didn't answer. "We could have had everything." His voice cracked then, just slightly. I finally looked at him, his jaw set, shoulders stiff, hair combed too carefully for someone not going anywhere. "You're right," I said quietly. "I am dropping the tea." The air shifted. He blinked, confused. "Wait, what?" I stood, closed the sketchbook. I stepped past him. "I'm dropping the silence." Through the glass door, his living room looked staged. Throw pillow straightened, coffee table bare. Not a single piece of humanity was left out in the open. "I'm dropping the version of myself you made up." He didn't follow. He didn't speak. My feet moved on instinct, each step gathering certainty. Inside, the tote bag waited near the door, still filled with T's zines and the t-shirt I'd made. For a moment I glanced at the wall above the couch, where Chris hung the framed print of us from last Christmas. Our smiles were bright and clean. It had always unsettled me, the way we matched in that photo. Too perfectly, like twins trying on adulthood. His voice didn't come after me, no last plea, no protest. Maybe he thought I was bluffing, maybe he always had. I didn't look back, not even once. I smelled the paint before I heard the music. The door to T's space was propped open with a cinder block wrapped in rainbow duct tape, the scent of acrylics and fabric dye spilling into the hot morning air. My shoes stuck slightly to the floor as I stepped in, glitter, glue, scraps of cut-up canvas trailing like confetti. Laughter floated from the back, not polite or planned. It echoed, real, not curated. I followed it past a drying rack of shirts that read, "Trans joy is revolutionary, we're not free until we all are you belong here." T stood near a giant white wall, halfway up a ladder, paint roller in hand. Their overalls were speckled in neons and metallics, streaked with past attempts and experiments. Someone blasted Robin through a Bluetooth speaker clipped to a folding chair. A few people I didn't recognize danced in circles with paper flags, both barefoot and unbothered. And one man I couldn't forget sat in the chair across the room wearing the best-fitting tank top I've seen in a while. I'd seen him around before but couldn't remember his name. T spotted me before I said anything. They didn't hesitate. The roller dropped into a tray and they climbed down like the floor might disappear before they reached it. No questions, no words, no checking the air for permission. Just arms around me. And I let it happen. My chin pressed into their shoulder. The scent of clay and citrus shampoo familiar enough to unravel something I hadn't touched in months. The tears didn't announce themselves. They didn't sting. They moved slow, then faster, breaking through the parts of me that had stayed frozen too long. I hadn't cried for Chris, not once, but here, with my best friend, I couldn't stop. T didn't pull away. "You're here," they said softly. I nodded. "I'm sorry." They leaned back, hands still gripping my arms. For what? For waiting so long. Their eyes didn't judge. "You came. That's enough." Someone handed me a brush. A tall, black trans woman I vaguely remembered from a poetry night a few months back. She didn't ask for context. She just pointed to the outline on the far side of the mural. The phoenix took up nearly the whole wall now. Wide wings outstretched, no symmetry, no rules. Fire woven into feathers. The body bloomed with gradients. Deep purples fading into electric orange, blues licking into pinks like watercolor caught mid-motion. I dipped my brush into gold. Not the metallic kind. A strange shade someone must have mixed by accident. Slightly dull, almost earthen, like it remembered what it meant to burn and be reborn. The section they gave me curved near the chest, where the ribs might live. "Put your version of survival here," someone said. Maybe T. Maybe someone else. So I painted crooked strokes, shapes that didn't resolve into anything perfect. And as the colors bled into each other, something inside me steadied. Not peace, not yet, but presence. No one asked about Chris. No one needed the backstory. My body must have carried it in already, written across my posture, stitched between the pauses in my speech. T handed me a bandana to wipe my face. "We're getting lunch from El Gallo later. You staying?" I nodded, wordless. Someone turned the music louder. A trans man with a sleeve of sea creatures played air guitar with a broom. Someone started painting a sign with stars. This wasn't the life Chris had promised. It wasn't crisp. It wasn't curated. But it pulsed. It breathed. It didn't ask me to shrink. Later, as the mural dried and the sun began to shift behind the buildings, I stood back and looked at what we'd made. The phoenix didn't sit still. It leapt from the wall, wild and unfinished, like it could break into motion at any second. And in my head I heard myself say, "They said I had to drop the T to find peace. But peace isn't silence. It's color. It's noise. It's love that doesn't shrink to fit." So yeah, I dropped the T, but not the one they meant.
Please make sure you are subscribed and be one of the strange.